Mars politely dismisses a maid who has brought him his meal, telling her he has no appetite and that she can leave. He introduces himself as Mars, the prince of a small kingdom in a corner of the continent. He knows people assume he lives a life of luxury, feasting on the finest foods. But under the cover of night, his truth is far from that assumption. He forces himself to eat the raw meat of a monster, a necessary act for his survival. He gags, barely able to stomach the terrible taste. Alone by a campfire, he tries to catch his breath. He had fled the castle to hunt monsters in the forest, like the horned rabbit lying dead nearby. Mars reflects that there is plenty of food available to him back at the castle. The problem is that most of it is laced with poison. His kingdom is corrupt, and the tyrannical Prime Minister, Gamalas, is determined to assassinate him. Overwhelmed, he wonders how long he can endure this life, yet steels himself to eat the foul meat to survive. A mysterious swordswoman appears behind Mars under the full moon, declaring he will be her pupil. Startled, Mars jumps back into a defensive stance. He wonders who she is, shocked that he failed to notice her approach. The woman comments that while he has much to learn, he possesses potential. She declares that he is worthy of inheriting her blade. Mars, bewildered, asks for her reasoning. With a sharp-toothed grin, she explains it's because she saw him eating monster meat. Her answer leaves Mars utterly baffled. The woman explains that consuming monster meat allows a human to slowly absorb the creature's strength despite its terrible taste and poisonous nature. Mars realizes this is why ordinary people avoid it, still confused by the woman's sudden appearance and strange lecture. He admits that he threw up at first, but notes the meat is less toxic than the meal that killed his poison tester. The woman's interest is piqued by his mention of a poison tester's death. Mars recounts his story, being a prime assassination target due to throne politics, and his father, the king, being unable to protect him. She pieces it together, asking if he eats monster meat to avoid the poisoned food at the castle. She points out the monster meat is also poisonous, but Mars says he's used to it, though it tastes awful. Showing no sympathy, she remarks that he is truly wonderful for enduring it. Cassandra tells him he still has much to learn about poison and offers him a gift. She tosses an object to a surprised Mars. He catches the ominous-looking ring, hesitantly thanking her. Questioning her motives for helping a stranger, he asks for her name, and she replies that it is Cassandra. Mars repeats the name, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He asks in disbelief if she is the Cassandra. He excitedly identifies her as the Red Demon Sword Saint, and she confirms the title, admitting she doesn't care for the Red Demon part. He recalls her reputation as the Red Demon, a legendary warrior known for defeating dragons and evil gods. He concludes that a ring from her must be a powerful magical item. He feels a surge of hope, believing that with Cassandra as his master, he will no longer have to fear assassination. Cassandra cruelly informs him that the ring is a cursed item that continuously poisons its wearer. Mars's hopeful expression turns to one of pure shock. She lays out his first test. He must demonstrate that he can conquer the ring's poison. As soon as the ring is on his finger, dark markings spread up his arm, causing him immense pain. He crumples to the ground, choking in agony and certain that he is going to die. Cassandra coldly tells him that relying on items for protection against poison is pathetic and orders him to overcome the ring's curse. She informs him that the ring can only be removed by conquering its poison or by death, and that poison resistance is learned by fighting poison. She theorizes that his consumption of monster meat should give him a chance to resist, unlike a normal person who would die instantly. This was Mars's first, terrifying impression of his new master. He curses the irony of being forced to wear a poisonous item as a way to avoid poison. Back in the castle, healers are baffled, unable to cure the poison with even their most potent magic. Mars lay half dead in his bed for 3 days and 3 nights, attended by concerned servants. The doctors gave up on him, and rumors spread that he had finally succumbed to poison, but he miraculously survived. After recovering, Mars overhears courtiers remarking on his poisoning, yet no one finds the event itself suspicious. Even his father shows no concern, coldly stating that self-preservation is Mars's own responsibility. Faced with another meal, he immediately suspects it is poisoned as well. He braces himself for the poison's effect. To his surprise, he feels no ill effects, realizing he has overcome the poison. He happily eats, exclaiming that normal food tastes the best and that his new resistance makes it all worthwhile. He later reports to Cassandra that he conquered the poison, and she congratulates her pupil. No longer needing to fear deadly poison, Mars bows and thanks his master deeply. Cassandra immediately presents his next trial, a pair of heavy bracelets. She explains they are enchanted with gravity magic that will double his weight, leading Mars to believe she is trying to kill him. She then asks if he has continued to eat monster meat, and he replies that he hasn't for a week. He explains that without the threat of poison, he has no reason to. Cassandra reacts with alarm, telling him this is a bad thing. Cassandra tells him to wait there and dashes off into the forest. She returns shortly after, dragging the corpse of a massive monster and dropping it at his feet. She effortlessly throws another, smaller monster carcass through the air. She tells him to eat the great basilisk she brought. She throws a piece of the mate, hitting him squarely in the face. She tells him that his new poison resistance should allow him to eat this rare, raw meat. Mars asks if he can cook it, but Cassandra denies his request, stating it would be less effective. Thinking she's truly serious, Mars reluctantly brings the raw meat to his lips. The moment it touches his tongue, he is overcome with disgust and fear. He chokes, barely able to breathe. He feels with certainty that this time he will surely die. Cassandra coldly orders him to swallow it. He forces his mouth shut, trying to swallow as Cassandra watches with an unreadable expression. His entire body shakes from the effort. Barely managing to speak, he asks his master if the meat is highly poisonous. Cassandra confirms that it is, explaining that a monster's strength correlates to the toxicity of its meat. Mars realizes that the great basilisk meat, which could kill 500 adults with a single lick, is the absolute limit of what he can endure. He manages to swallow the piece, hoping his ordeal for the day is over. However, Cassandra points to the rest of the carcass and commands him to finish it. She challenges him, asking if he believes he's already strong enough to stop eating. Cassandra challenges him to attack her with his sword. Mars is insulted, noticing she hasn't even drawn her own weapon. Feeling underestimated, he prepares to attack. He decides to strike with all his might from the very beginning. Cassandra casually swats him away, sending him crashing into the trees. She bluntly tells him he's weak and must eat more monster meat. Mars curses her, thinking she lives up to her red demon name, and reflects on how he eventually ate all the meat through tears. From that day on, Mars's training continued under his master's watch. Meeting only once a week, Cassandra would berate him if his growth was too slow for the amount of meat he consumed. The fear of her punishments, either force-feeding him or beating him, drove him to train relentlessly, and soon he began fighting monsters himself. His master believed he should only fight weak monsters on his own, so she would carefully select opponents he could barely defeat. Still, Mars knew that the most fearsome monster he faced was Cassandra herself. After he improved, she would challenge him directly, telling him to try and kill her. He recalls that her specialty was holding back just enough to avoid killing him. He describes the training as hell, as her speed was overwhelming, and he was always beaten nearly to death. This brutal regimen lasted for 3 years. After 3 years of training, Mars is now able to parry one of Cassandra's attacks. She smirks, acknowledging that he's finally starting to get the hang of it. He credits his improvement to his survival instincts, which forced him to learn how to detect and avoid her attacks. He reflects that the torture of his training made fighting assassins seem trivial. One day, his master presented him with a massive dragon-like creature and told him to handle it. After 3 years of hellish training, Mars confidently faces down a massive wyvern. Cassandra holds up the wyvern's heart, remarking that it's a strong monster, though not quite a dragon. She congratulates Mars, telling him he has become very strong. He retorts that he simply didn't want to die starving, sarcastically thanking her. Cassandra observes that he appears to have grown accustomed to eating monster meat. Mars agrees that growing strong is great, privately thinking that it makes dealing with assassins easier than dealing with Cassandra. She gets his attention and informs him that she has nothing more to teach him. She warns him to continue his training, threatening to kill him for real if she finds him slacking. With that parting threat, the woman who had trained him for 3 years was gone. It occurs to Mars that she likely travels the world in search of strong foes, making her 3-year stay in his kingdom unusual. He muses that she would probably hunt him down and kill him if he ever skipped his training. Despite everything, he acknowledges that her training undoubtedly made him stronger. He resolves to become even stronger, knowing his survival depends on it. The desperate measures he took to escape assassins led him down a hellish path, but he couldn't have known then just how much his meeting with Cassandra would alter the course of his life. He had to survive the assassins, powerful monsters, and even his own master. With grim determination, he accepts his fate. He has no choice but to continue eating monster meat. Prince Mars reflects on his precarious situation. It has been some time since his teacher, Cassandra, disappeared, yet assassins still come for his life. The attempts are so frequent that he dryly worries about a worker shortage in the assassin industry, knowing Gamarras is still plotting against him. He recalls his family's history, how Gamarras orchestrated his father's marriage to gain power, making Mars a target for elimination. His mentor, Cassandra, also threatened his life, pushing him to keep eating monster meat to grow stronger. Surrounded by threats, Mars wanders through the woods, knowing survival depends on his strength. Suddenly, a noise from the bushes catches his attention. He discovers a group of men sparring fiercely with swords. Mars finds this odd, as 2 centuries of peace have rendered such skills obsolete in his country. With duels forbidden, dedicated swordmasters are considered eccentric. Cassandra, however, seems to find a use for one of the defeated men. Resolving to get stronger, Mars approaches the group with a friendly smile, asking if he can join their training. They immediately eye him with suspicion, asking who he is and correctly guessing he's a noble. Their leader accuses him of looking down on them and tells him to leave before he gets hurt, revealing a deep-seated resentment towards nobles. A scarred man, Ogma, seems to understand Mars's desire and agrees to let him train. However, he adds a grim condition: Mars cannot complain if he ends up dead. Mars realizes this man is completely serious, concluding he must be an idiot. In their first exchange, Ogma is thrown back by a powerful blow from Mars. Mars is surprised the man is still alive, noting that an ordinary assassin would have been killed instantly. Having found what he was looking for, Mars addresses the defeated group under the moonlight, declaring them his new training partners. Mars argues that since he is stronger, they clearly need better training partners like him. The group's leader angrily refuses, explaining they already struggle just to eat every day. He mockingly asks what a spoiled noble like Mars could possibly know about their hardship. Mars nonchalantly answers that he ate red bone meat, leaving the man stunned. Ogma shouts in disbelief, questioning how Mars could have eaten meat from a monster he couldn't possibly defeat alone. The others call him a liar, saying everyone knows monster meat is poison. One man shares a story of being bedridden after eating it. Unfazed by their accusations, Mars calmly tells them there is something behind them. A monstrous blood bear appears behind the terrified men, roaring ferociously. While they panic, Mars coolly assesses the creature as his next potential meal. The massive blood bear is swiftly defeated. Mars walks away from the slain beast, leaving the others in stunned silence. One of the men stammers, unable to comprehend what just happened. To prove his point about monster meat, Mars calmly begins eating a piece of the fresh kill. He then tosses a piece to the astonished men, inviting them to try it for themselves. Mars holds out the meat, cautioning them that a small bite is all they should take, as any more could be fatal. Ogma looks at the meat with grim determination. He steels himself and takes a bite. His body immediately rejects the foul-tasting, poisonous flesh. The warrior doubles over, violently ill. Ogma recalls being ridiculed by other nobles for his dedication to training, as they saw no purpose for strength in a time of peace. To escape the depressing expectations of his family, he hid his identity and gathered like-minded friends. Together they formed a group called 100, an organization that pursues only power. He established a simple rule for his group: power is everything, and hierarchy is determined by strength alone. They grew to over 20 members and took pride in being the strongest force in the nation, stronger even than the knights. But after witnessing Mars and tasting the monster meat, Ogma understood that someone with a much greater power had just arrived. Mars looks down at the revolted Ogma and simply tells him to eat more monster meat. The group gathers around, listening to their new mentor. He advises them to start with weaker meat, like a killer rabbit's, before they can handle something as potent as a blood bear. Ogma collapses, realizing his so-called seekers of power were nothing but a lie, possessing none of the strength or resolve of the boy before him. Ogma kneels before Mars, pledging his group's loyalty and asking for his guidance. He bestows upon him the title number 0 for being the strongest. Mars is taken aback by the title. Ogma suggested the new name Zeros to protect his identity, and Mars accepted. Donning a suit of armor to hide his identity, Mars was able to train with his full power, greatly improving his skill in fighting groups. He notes that the 100 members fought with more enthusiasm than any assassin, always getting back up no matter how many times he beat them. And so, a year passed in this strange but fulfilling routine. They continued their training, but Mars felt that something was changing. Under Ogma's leadership, the Hundred's training has become a bizarre ritual of lifting heavy stones. Afterward, he commands them all to eat monster meat. A new culture has emerged where members are praised for eating stronger monster meat and shamed for only managing weaker fare. Two members marvel at Zero's eating dragon meat, wondering how much he's consumed to become so powerful, though one privately feels greatness isn't determined by that alone. Atop a defeated dragon, Mars reflects that he feels more respected now than he ever did as a prince. At the Black Knight's headquarters, a subordinate reports to Commander Chrome about a strange group that fights constantly and consumes monster meat. Chrome is informed that this group, 100, has even attracted some of his own Black Knights. While his advisors see the group's monster hunting as beneficial, Chrome is not convinced. He suspects their practice of eating monster meat is the work of an evil cult and is concerned that his own men are involved. He vows to investigate the 100 personally and declares that the Black Knights will crush them if they pose a threat to the nation. A member of the 100 rallies new recruits, instructing them on how to hunt monsters. He advises them to eat the monster meat slowly, little by little. An undercover female knight is surprised by the welcoming atmosphere, finding it very different from what she expected. She learns that the group's core principle is eating monster meat. Strength alone is not enough to be accepted. She is offered a piece of meat, with the promise that it will make her stronger despite the taste. She braces herself, knowing she has to eat it. The moment she does, her body violently rejects it. As she struggles, a member laughs good-naturedly, remarking that everyone starts that way. She wonders if they are trying to poison her. Convinced they are an evil cult for eating such things, she becomes even more determined. She vows to gather the evidence needed to bring them all down. A year later, a transformed Commander Chrome marvels at the power of monster meat, feeling his strength has greatly increased. The female knight reports that the 100 hunts monsters every night, eats their meat, and then spars until only one is left standing. She confesses that she initially questioned her sanity for joining them. But now she finds the relentless pursuit of true strength to be a wonderful and exhilarating experience. She speaks reverently of their leader, Zeros, calling him a truly unreachable being. She explains that he has mastered legendary skills once used by the nation's founder and generously shares his knowledge with others. Awestruck by his power and generosity, she declares that to move against the 100 would be an act of blasphemy. Among the 100, Mars feels he has finally found his purpose. He overhears conflicting rumors in the castle. Nobles call them barbarians, while commoners see them as heroes. He concludes that his life as Zeros is far more enjoyable than his life as a prince under constant threat of assassination. The king summons Mars and asks him about the group known as 100. The king describes them as a crazy, evil cult where members kill each other and eat monster meat. Before Mars can properly answer, Gamaras interjects, stating that Prince Mars is the next king. Mars recognizes his would-be assassin, who proposes a suggestion. Gamaras proposes that the prince should personally lead the subjugation of the 100. He claims that such a victory would undoubtedly cement Mars's claim to the throne. Mars is stunned, realizing this is a death sentence. He is being ordered to destroy his own organization. He knows this is Gamaras's revenge, a plot to ruin him politically since the 100 is popular with the people. His father, obeying Gamaras's influence, turns to him and asks if he will accept the mission. Forced into a corner, Mars puts on a brave face and accepts the request, all while frantically trying to figure out his next move. He walks through the castle halls, acknowledging Gamaras's plot to destroy him but determined not to let him succeed. He is trapped with no obvious way out of the predicament. A mysterious, white-haired girl observes Mars as he passes. He remains completely unaware of her presence, consumed by his dilemma. The mysterious girl, Frau, greets Mars, saying it's been a long time since they last met. Mars is confused, not recognizing her. He wonders who she is and how she got into his room, initially suspecting she's another assassin. He quickly dismisses the idea, noting her refined aura. She sees his predicament and offers her assistance. The girl addresses him by name, Mars. Then she corrects herself, calling him Zeros. Mars is left speechless, stunned that this stranger knows his deepest secret. The mysterious girl offers to lend her power, addressing him first as Mars and then as Zeros. Confused, Mars wonders who she is and how she knows his name, questioning if they've met before. The girl looks on with a hint of disappointment, remarking that, as expected, he has forgotten. She introduces herself as Frau, his fiancée. The revelation stuns Mars. He quickly recovers, apologizing for his surprise and pretending to remember her. However, he's still puzzled by one thing, how she knew to call him Zeros. Mars silently panics, realizing that while he has hidden his identity as the prince, there's no way Frau could know what's happening after so many years. Frau explains that she is always watching him. She reveals a glowing crest on her hand. She explains that through the crest, she can share his vision and even teleport to his side. Mars looks at a similar mark on his own hand. He recalls a memory from childhood when Frau cast a spell on him, which he dismissed as a cool mark at the time. The horrifying realization dawns on him. Frau has been watching his every move through this mark for years. Frau begins to recount their shared past. She and Mars were introduced as fiancés when she was 8 years old. Back then, she found him to be an ordinary boy and wasn't particularly interested in him. She had just learned a new pact mark spell and used Mars as a test subject. She was satisfied with the successful result. Later, when Mars was 11 and near death from poison, her interest was piqued. She used the contract to observe him more closely. To her surprise, he began acting abnormally, resorting to eating monster meat to survive. She was initially repulsed by the sight of him eating monster meat. But as she saw his magical power increasing, her fascination grew. Eventually, she decided to follow his example and began eating monster meat herself despite the awful taste. This has continued ever since. Frau admits that she never gets bored of Prince Mars. Mars processes the unsettling fact that his private life is constantly being watched. Deciding to deal with that later, he asks what she meant by lending him her power. The scene shifts to the Hundred's base, where Zeros reacts to a new development. Two of the kingdom's knight commanders, Chrome and Warren, have surprisingly joined the Hundred. While the White and Blue Knights protect the capital and royalty, the Red and Black Knights handle expeditions and monster subjugation. Inside the base, Mars, as Zeros, senses a heavy atmosphere as Ogma approaches him. Ogma reports that the country is trying to annihilate them, and that Chrome and Warren have been appointed to lead the charge. Zeros notes how quickly the information leaked, and announces their plan to leave the country. However, Warren and Chrome interrupt, declaring that the Red and Black Knight orders will support Hundred to the very end and will accept any decision Zeros makes. Zeros is taken aback by their declaration to support him until the end. Chrome proclaims that with their combined forces, they have a chance to win a rebellion under Zeros' leadership. Mars is horrified, realizing they have no intention of running away and are instead planning a civil war. Mars thinks to himself that he would much rather flee than start a problematic rebellion. He removes his helmet, revealing himself as Prince Mars to a shocked Warren. The members of Hundred are stunned to learn that their leader, Zeros, is actually Prince Mars. He explains that as the Prince of Falun, he could never rebel against his own country. Chrome finally understands his meaning. Mars hopes his message was received, and Chrome confirms that the prince's thoughts were transmitted perfectly. Chrome declares that Mars doesn't want a rebellion, but a legitimate war for the throne. Mars is bewildered by this interpretation. Chrome continues, positioning them as the side of justice in a battle for succession. Another member excitedly claims this was Mars's plan all along, but Mars insists he never gathered forces for such a dangerous purpose. Mars points out that Hundred has grown to over 1,000 members, a situation they themselves created. He tries to bring them back to reality. He explains that the royal castle is impenetrable and they have little chance of winning against the kingdom's full might. This includes not just other knight orders, but the formidable magic division. Suddenly Frau appears, declaring that they will be allies of Prince Mars. A stunned Mars can only utter her name. Chrome laughs, explaining that Frau has already informed them of everything. He adds that while some members of Hundred might not know it yet, they have a powerful new ally. The group learns that Frau is a key part of the country's defense, known by the moniker Empress of Thunder. Frau announces she will be in charge of the magic division, and the crowd erupts, believing their victory is now assured. Mars is aghast, realizing that instead of fleeing, they were planning to fight all along. The situation is spiraling into a rebellion he never wanted. Mars questions Frau, asking why she would help them so much. He points out their engagement was merely an arrangement by their parents and pleads with her not to do anything unnecessary. Frau replies that from now on she will act as a true fiancée, revealing she gained her power by copying him and eating monster meat. Frau admits she wasn't interested in Mars at first. But his life, constantly near death, is so interesting that she can't think of breaking their engagement. She tells him she wants to keep watching him and is truly glad he is her fiancé, though Mars finds this to be absolutely no comfort at all. With their forces assembled, a member of 100 declares that victory is guaranteed. They now have Commander Warren, Commander Chrome and Frau, the Empress of Thunder, on their side. With Ogma, the rest of 100, and their leader Zeros, now revealed as Prince Mars, all the key players are gathered. Mars looks on in despair as his followers rally for a war he desperately tried to avoid. The members of 100 roar with excitement, united in their cause to wipe out the rotten nobles of the kingdom. Mars observes the unbreakable spirit of the group, now fully committed to a rebellion. He laments that while their chances of winning are high, the entire situation is moving down a path of conflict he never wanted. He wonders when he ever expressed interest in the throne, as his excited friends rally around him, sealing his fate. Despite Mars's attempts to prevent it, the rebellion has begun. His followers, led by an eager Warren and Chrome, rally behind him, proclaiming him the rightful heir to the Faerun kingdom. The crowd roars in support, pledging to see the rebellion through in the name of justice. Mars looks on, overwhelmed by the fervor of the people he now leads. Mars reflects on his predicament. When ordered to destroy the 100, he was faced with two choices: flee or rebel, and now there is no turning back. He never intended to start a rebellion and doesn't even want the throne. His only motivation was to survive, that's all. After a life without allies, the trust his followers now place in him is a heavy burden he feels he cannot refuse. From afar, Frau observes the unfolding events, noting that Mars has become a threat to the kingdom. For some reason, she finds she cannot look away from him. Mars resolves to see the rebellion through to success. Frau, watching him, privately expresses her desire to fight alongside him. The day of the battle finally arrives. As they prepare to march, the White Knight's deputy commander approaches Mars, asking if he is tense before his first battle. The deputy commander advises Mars that his noble role is simply to defeat the leader of the 100, Zeros. He warns that failure will bring dire consequences. Mars understands the subtext. The White Knights, composed of nobles loyal to Gamaras, are not there to protect him but to ensure he falls, likely by betraying him. A soldier announces that they are ready to advance. Before they begin, Chrome requests a moment of Mars's time. The deputy commander quickly interjects, scolding Chrome and Warren for addressing the prince directly. Another knight adds that the prince has no need to involve himself with the 100. The commander is left stunned by their audacity. The deputy commander dismisses the 100 as mere commoners playing at being knights. Warren laughs, mocking the White Knight's sense of chivalry as shameful. Seeing the enthusiasm of his true allies, Mars steels his resolve for the coming conflict. His sword is now pointed toward the capital. Mars suddenly issues a shocking order to all his troops: their true enemy is in the capital. The deputy commander demands an explanation, confused by the prince's words. Mars clarifies that their enemy is the very force they are marching alongside. In a swift and brutal motion, Mars cuts down the deputy commander. The surrounding White Knights are shocked by the sudden violence. They praise the prince's masterful and perfectly executed sword stroke, even as their leader falls. Mars turns to a surviving knight, stating calmly that he knew they intended to kill him, regardless of the battle's outcome. The knight is stunned that their plan was so obvious. Chrome appears, remarking that he isn't surprised by their treachery. He swiftly cuts the treacherous knight down. The remaining White Knights plead for their lives, claiming they were only following the deputy commander's orders. Mars coldly questions how such pathetic knights could ever protect the kingdom. Chrome agrees, stating that with men like them in power, true peace can never be achieved. With the traitors dispatched, Chrome's forces surround a startled Mars. Chrome declares the White Knights tarnished and invites Prince Mars to join him. He vows to bring true justice to the corrupt kingdom. Mars finds Chrome's loyalty heartwarming but also unsettling. Mars finds Chrome's intense gaze unnerving. Warren warns Prince Mars that they are probably being watched. Mars agrees it is now a race against time to reach the royal capital. As they approach, guards spot the prince's arrival and give the order to seal the gates. However, Sir Bled of the Blue Knights smashes the gate controls. He declares that the Blue Knights pledge themselves to Prince Mars and orders the gates opened. Mars thanks Sir Bled for his good work. Sir Bled pledges that the Blue Knights will maintain order in the capital, wishing the prince fortune in his fight. Inside the capital, fighting has already broken out. Mars spots Ogma leading the charge. A royal knight scoffs at the rebels, boasting of true swordsmanship. Ogma laughs, retorting that the 100 will show them what real swordsmanship looks like. Ogma declares that battle is not a show, but a matter of survival. He tells the knight that true strength means smashing your enemy to pieces and that lofty ideals won't save him. He demonstrates this by shattering the knight's helmet with a single punch. A royal knight screams that violence cannot be stopped with brute force as he is sent flying. Mars sadly reflects that it is true the 100 are nothing but thugs. However, he reminds himself that they have the mage core on their side. He anticipates that when the mages get involved, things will turn nasty. Inside the mage tower, Frau stands ready. A man rushes in, informing Frau that Prince Mars has started a rebellion. Frau turns to her father with a single solemn request. She demands that he step down and pass the family title to her, leaving him utterly shocked. Her father, shocked, questions her demand to have him step down right then and there. He refuses, stating he's not old enough to retire and that a woman cannot lead the family. Frau simply calls his reasoning sad. She begins to gather magical energy, making her father nervously question her intentions. With a single word, rebellion, Frau unleashes a powerful shockwave, incapacitating the mages around her. One of the mages collapses in agony. She calmly explains her methods, starting with a shock. She continues, explaining that if they survive the shock, they will face lightning and then an explosion. Her father looks on in horror. Frau continues her threat, stating that if they survive the explosion, dissolution will follow. The mages scream in agony under her spell. Her father pleads with her to stop, but she asks him one more time to surrender the family title. As her father screams, Frau implores him to grant his daughter's wish just this once. The mages watch in terror. Outside the capital gates, Mars's group wonders why the mage corps hasn't joined the fight. Mars dreads to think what Frau might be doing. His allies clear a path, telling Mars to leave the rest to them. Mars thanks his men as he advances. Inside the throne room, they are met by Gamaras, who expresses surprise at seeing the prince lead a rebellion. Gamaras declares that Mars's path to the throne ends here, and that in his name the prince's life is now forfeit. Behind Gamaras stands an elite party of adventurers, ready for battle. They issue a final warning to Prince Mars, to prepare himself for the fight to come. An elite party of adventurers declares their intent to kill Prince Mars. As his father, the king, looks on in distress, Mars can only think of him with disdain. Mars realizes his father is indifferent to the outcome, caring only for his own safety, as one of the adventurers casts a gravity spell. Gamaras gloats, revealing that they have restrained Mars with magic. Mars retorts that while their rebellion was a surprise, he came prepared, having hired a rank adventurers and secured reinforcements. With a sudden burst of movement, Mars breaks free from the spell's effects. The adventurer leader is shocked, questioning how he resisted the gravity spell. Mars calmly explains that he has simply grown used to it, a feat the adventurer finds unbelievable. An adventurer attacks, unleashing the power of a poison lizard, confident that Mars will soon be paralyzed. To his shock, Mars casually remarks that he remembers eating one, horrifying the adventurer who knows the creature is pure poison. Believing Mars is merely bluffing, an armored adventurer charges forward, sword raised to strike him down. The other party members cry out in shock and disbelief. In a flash, the armored adventurer is cut down, his body collapsing as his comrades watch. The party leader desperately asks if their fallen comrade can be healed, but the mage insists such a wound would require a necromancer. Mars apologizes, admitting he lost control since it has been a while since he fought without his power-suppressing bracelet. The adventurer leader orders his remaining team to launch a coordinated attack. Mars prepares to unleash a sonic blade. The sonic blade strikes the hooded adventurer, Chad, sending him flying. The leader screams for their healer, Luida, to help him. Luida cries out that the wound is too severe for her to heal. Annoyed, the female mage Mika prepares a powerful fire spell, blazing crimson flames. Mika unleashes a massive inferno, a beast made of fire, commanding it to burn her enemy. Facing the overwhelming attack, Mars realizes he cannot dodge this one. A strange, winged light begins to form before him. The flames collide with the mysterious light, causing a massive explosion that stuns the two remaining female adventurers. Mika is in disbelief that her best spell was stopped, as the adventurer leader identifies the defense as a magic barrier, a skill only high-level monsters possess. Mars smirks, enjoying their surprise. He reveals internally that he perfected the skill by repeatedly hunting and eating the meat of a demon ape. He then turns his attention to the remaining adventurers. Mars offers to let the remaining adventurers go, stating he has no intention of killing them. The leader refuses, angered at the suggestion they would flee after their comrades were killed. Declaring his pride as an A-rank adventurer, he charges at Mars. The two swordsmen clash fiercely, and the adventurer leader, impressed by Mars's skill, believes he might have a chance. Sensing this, Mars prepares to end the fight. Instead of using his sword, Mars delivers a powerful kick, shattering the ground and sending the adventurer reeling. The leader is stunned by the unexpected attack. Mars explains that his master always fought this way, so he does too. His opponent defeated, Mars turns to face his final foe, Gamaras. Mars informs a terrified Gamaras that he is the only one left. Gamaras despairs, wondering how it came to this after he poured his heart and soul into the kingdom. He recalls 15 years ago when the kingdom was in chaos due to the former queen. He remembers convincing the king to stage a coup to save it. Gamaras reflects on his tireless work with the nobles to improve the country. He believed he had to accept both good and bad to manage the complex situation for the good of the people. However, Prince Mars was always a hurdle to his plans. He feared that a noble would eventually use the young prince as a political pawn, a situation he felt he had to prevent. Though he knew Mars was innocent, Gamaras decided the prince had to be eliminated. Yet somehow Mars survived every attempt on his life, despite having no allies. Ogma and Chrome burst in, announcing that the nobles have been crushed. Chrome points out that Gamaras is the only one left. Mars is shocked to learn that all the other nobles may have been killed. He wonders how the 100 could possibly govern now. Gamaras has a horrifying realization: could Prince Mars be Zero, the leader of the 100? He wonders if Mars has been building his own faction all this time. Mars grimaces at the thought of the 100 ruling and considers letting his father keep the throne. Mars approaches his father and speaks of the throne. The king immediately relinquishes it, telling Mars it's his. Mars is internally exasperated that his father didn't even pretend to hesitate. Looking around, Mars asks if there is anyone present who knows how to govern. Gamaras looks up, startled. Mars looks directly at Gamaras and declares that he is now in charge of the kingdom's affairs. Gamaras is stunned into silence. In the days that followed, the kingdom returned to order, a wedding was held, and Mars's bride was Frau. Frau had earned the people's trust through her bravery in the Civil War. However, her dark musings about using human sacrifices make Mars question if she is fit to be queen. Ogma and Chrome lecture Mars, unable to understand why he put Gamaras, the man who tried to kill him, in a position of power. Mars explains to Ogma that the 100 are obsessed with strength and cannot be trusted to handle the kingdom's politics. Gamaras, who has been working non-stop, overhears this and tearfully pledges his life to serve Mars, proclaiming him a king among kings. At the coronation, Mars's father proclaims him the new king as his allies, and the people cheer. As the crown is placed on his head, Mars reflects that all he ever wanted was to survive. And so, by eating monster meat, Mars ascended to the throne. Now, as King Mars stands beside his queen, Frau, he wonders how he will rebuild the kingdom. He looks out over his new domain and contemplates what awaits him now.